Meet the new demon child, same as the old demon child. Hello everyone and welcome to Movie Reviews by Josh. My name is Josh Terry and today I'm here to tell you about the not really long-awaited sequel to The Ring from 2002, Rings, plural. Now there actually was another one in between called The Ring 2, which I think was in 2005. I say I think because I didn't actually see it. The first one I did find quite scary. I thought that this was the one about the videotape that when you watch it and then the little creepy voice on the phone tells you you have a week to live, and then a week later some girl with stringy hair crawls out of your TV and kills you. And it was really disturbing. Like I was genuinely scared by that movie. And so I had a little bit of anticipation going into this. Of course, one of the things that you kind of learn over the years is that the longer the stretch between the original and even the follow-up and then another sequel, it's kind of a bad sign. And unfortunately, that is very much the case with Rings, a movie that has some good roots, but unfortunately is really just rehashing the same thing. In fact, I had to do a little bit of research to find out whether this was actually intended to be a reboot of the first movie, because structurally, story-wise, it's really just doing the same thing, which is totally ridiculous because, again, back to the original concept, this is about a video, a creepy video that you see a bunch of whole images that don't seem to be related, but they all look like they were taken from the same German art film. They're really dark and black and white. And, eventually we find out in the first movie, spoiler alert, of course, you're not going to be watching a review for Rings if you aren't familiar with the first one. We found out in the first movie that all of these images were related to this girl who had been abused and killed and all this kind of thing. And Naomi Watts was able to track her down and thought she had saved her. And then all of a sudden, she's still really evil and all this kind of thing. And like I said, it was a scary movie. Now, 15 years down the road with Rings, it's kind of the same thing all over again. And you would think that, okay, well, hey, we've got all this new 21st century technology that we could add into this. But they don't really use it. Basically, what happens this time around is Johnny Galecki, the guy from Big Bang Theory, is playing this guy who apparently is the worst professor on earth because he comes across the video and in order to save himself, but still study it because he's a professor of some kind of experimental biology, which they don't really explain, but there's not a lot of explanation going on in this movie. He sets up a experiment whereby he recruits his own students to watch the video and to make copies of it so that they can kind of keep the demon alive, I guess. They call it a tale, and I guess the idea, because this is what kind of emerged from the tail end of the very first movie, there's tail again, is that if you make a copy of it and give it to somebody else before Samara, that's the name of the stringy-haired girl, before she kills you, then you kind of keep it going and you dodge the bullet. So basically, if you're willing to sacrifice somebody else to a life or to a demonic violent end, that's okay, And so he sets up this weird, experiment where, well, see, that's the thing. I'm talking a lot about this experiment. The movie's really not about the experiment. That's just how we are introduced to it, because this one guy who's one of the professor's students gets involved, and his girlfriend eventually shows up, and she's the protagonist. That's kind of the weird thing here, is that it's still a central female protagonist who is just, basically she finds a video within the video that sends them on a new chase to figure out a new mystery connected to the girl's death. And so they go out to this other Pacific Northwest town where everything is really dreary and miserable, and it looks just like the first movie, but it doesn't have any of the atmosphere or the dread of the first movie. And after a while, you realize that they're really just kind of rehashing the same thing. There's a video, the images on it tell a story. When you can figure out what the images mean, you bring the demon to life, and then maybe you can solve it, but maybe you didn't really. I mean, it's the exact same story over and over, which is so sad because here they have this opportunity where, okay, well, what happens if this video goes viral? And to be fair, they do hint at that, but it's more along the lines of, this is what we're going to do in the sequel rather than what we're going to do in this movie that you've just paid $10 to see and spend 90 minutes of your life on. So Rings, don't bother. It definitely is not worth it. If you have seen The Ring, you're going to see just the same thing over and over again, and you're going to be disappointed that they haven't done anything new. If you have not seen The Ring, then just go see The Ring, because that's the actual scary one. So for Rings, I'm probably going to have to wind up going with something like a 0.5 star. Like it's not the worst movie I've ever seen. I don't know that I could give it a 0 stars and just absolutely pan it. It's more just a retread. It's not worth your time. I mean, there are some vaguely positive elements that you could point to if you absolutely had to, but I don't have to. So 0.5 star. There you go. It is PG-13. For there's some sexual content. There is some violence and some profanity. I don't recall anything that out of the ordinary. I mean, it's pretty much your standard PG-13 movie fare, which for a lot of people is disappointing, because you figure it's a horror movie, then it's supposed to be violent and crazy, and this is not a really violent, crazy movie. In fact, one of the things that's most disappointing about it is that it has all of these elements in place, and it's just not scary. I mean, I was even thinking during watching this movie that the jump scares are more like hop scares. You can see them coming. The fear is not of what is happening. The fear is knowing that something is getting ready to jump out at you at some point, and you're just kind of sitting there waiting for it to happen. That's the tension. That's not real tension. That's not tension from a story. That's not a good movie. That's not a good horror movie. So PG-13, definitely want to skip this one. Hopefully there's some better ones coming down the pike. Okay. So thanks again for watching. As always, be sure to subscribe and keep your notifications on so that you can see as soon as we have the new videos up. I'd like to thank our friends at Rockagator for their sponsorship, the makers of fine waterproof backpacks for your outdoor adventures, and we'll see you next time.